Good evening, everyone. My name is Guy Lancaster. I am the editor of the Encyclopedia of Arkansas, project of the Central Arkansas Library System. And tonight we are having something of a casual chat with my good friend V.L. Cox, who is a nationally renowned artist, born in Shreveport, but from Arkadelphia, grew up there and graduated from there. Go Reddies.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So I just posted in the chat that, we're going to be having kind of a casual discussion here. If at any point in this, any of you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we will incorporate them into our discussion. And before we open this up, if you go to cals.org, cals.org, we're reaching the tail end of March, but there will be some other women's history events available, and also check out the YouTube channel of the Central Arkansas Library System for any previous events that we've had, if you want to look at them. Also, I'm going to put into the chat the very handy Encyclopedia of Arkansas entry on V.L. Cox, if you want to get up to speed on that, and also see some pictures of her and her artwork. I've got a beer here, V.L. How about you?
I've got a beer.
All right, let's get this going. I've even got my mason jug here, or mason jar.
Oh my gosh, you're ahead of me. I've been up here too long, I guess.
Are you just drinking straight out of the bottle?
I'm going to drink out of the bottle tonight.
Okay. Well. This is work.
Cheers.
Cheers. All right, let's get started. So I wrote a few things down. We had talked last time about maybe starting with some stories of ancestors, because your artistic career didn't come out of anywhere. You've inherited some of this, haven't you?
Yeah, my great grandmother was an artist, and she graduated with an art degree, I believe in 1902, 1904. I can't remember which one, which was kind of rare for a woman back then.
Yeah.
And she was a very good painter, painted a lot. She decided to have a family, though, and settled down in old Washington, Arkansas. And most of her paintings were destroyed in a fire. My great-grandfather's mercantile store caught on fire. And the surviving paintings are at the Historic Arkansas Museum at this point.
Okay, and what is her name so folks can go check them out?
Virginia Louise Pilkington Betts.
Okay. But you have some other family members who encouraged your artistic work.
Yeah, my grandmother, which was her daughter, encouraged my artwork at a very early age. She signed me up at Henderson State University for a children's program one summer. I was 10 years old. And Joe Scott was the professor at the time, and he was actually my grandmother's neighbor as well. So I grew up with his kids. But he was my teacher, and we did a lot of cool stuff in that class. And then when she passed away, I found that little portfolio in the bottom of her cedar chest. So I still have it. It's my earliest artwork, actually. And Joe Scott, when I decided to go to Henderson years later, he became my advisor, and then he became my mentor, and he became my friend. We were very close when he died. So it was a lifelong thing that came from that art class at the age of 10. But she really encouraged the art. It's probably because she was surrounded by it as a child.
What's it like to have family that understands what you do?
Well, not all of them understand it. Well, let's clarify that.
Okay.
She did understand it, and I've got an aunt that's an artist, and my father was an architect and an engineer, but he was also a very good artist. So they got it for sure. And my mother didn't quite understand it. She said I was too much like Peter Pan, and she was worried I was never going to amount to anything. And I said, well, okay. So you got those family members as well.
Hmm.
I had
Yeah.
a little support though from a few.
Hmm. So where are you now?
I'm in Peekskill, New York, which is about from Grand Central Station. I'm a little less than an hour out
Mm.
of Manhattan. But
So is this going to be the title of your autobiography, From Arkadelphia to Peekskill?
I don't know. We'll see. The journey just keeps on going, you know.
Hmm.
I love it here, though. Being from the country, you know, consider myself a country girl. I mean, I'm in the middle of the mountains, actually. People, when you say New York, people automatically think of Manhattan, but New York is a beautiful state with tons of hiking trails. And, you know, the
Hmm.
Hudson River is amazing and a lot of mountains and things like that. It's a small town, one of the villages, and it's been really good to plant here.
Hmm.
I really like it here.
So what are you doing up there?
It was a long winter, or should I say, it is still a long winter. It
Hmm.
snowed today again, so it's still pretty cold up here. It took me almost a year though to get ready for the Rosa Parks exhibition. So since I've been here almost a year now, and I poured myself into that, and then it opened in January. So I've started some new projects, and I've got another exhibition coming up in Cincinnati in November that I'm getting ready for.
Hmm.
So just, you know, I needed a break from some of the political insanity of the South. I was really tired, you know, after being on the road for so many years. And I'd been wanting to come to New York because there's more opportunity in my career field. And I've made a lot of friends up here. I've got a lot of friends and acquaintances up here as well. So after COVID, you know, I was able to get this cool place and decided to go ahead and do it. And
Yeah.
I'm really glad I did.
So I mean, any big cultural adjustments?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I will say this though, not most, a lot of the people that I have met, I would say almost half the people I have met up here are Southern transplants.
Yeah.
A lot of them are from the Carolinas, some from Tennessee. You know, there's a few Arkansans up here. So there's a lot of transplants here. But culturally, it is different. It's a lot colder. I'm not used to that. I'm used to it being just a little bit warmer this time of year at this point.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the people.
Oh well, the people are different too, but I like them. I mean, you know, I've got a lot of really good friends here, like I said.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. I think the biggest differences I've noticed though, other than the temperature, is culinary. The culinary is really a big difference. And I know a lot of people come from all over the world, and I'm sure if I dug hard enough, I could find what I'm looking for. But I can't find cheese dip up here. There's no cheese dip up here.
Not even like queso at a Mexican restaurant or something?
They look at you very funny if you ask for queso. So
Really?
there might be some in the city, but I haven't
Mhm.
found any in these villages yet.
Well, if this whole art thing doesn't pan out, you just open yourself a cheese dip factory
That's what I'm thinking.
and a proper barbecue joint.
Yeah, that's true. Now, one has opened up here in Peekskill, and I went and got some smoked meat from him the other night. I had some friends over,
Hmm.
and I told him I was from the South, and he looked nervous, and I was like, "No, really, I'm sure it's good." He's only been smoking meat for about 6 months, though, and I have to say the meat was absolutely delicious. It was really good. He was using a commercial sauce, though, and I
Hmm.
refuse to use anything but McLaurin's. I have it shipped up here to me. So
Right.
I just picked up the meat and brought it here and pulled out my own barbecue sauce. And it was pretty
Hmm.
good.
So what's the we've discussed the beginnings and we've discussed peak skill. What happened in between?
Now now narrow that down for me.
Yeah, because that's a big,
That's a
you
lot.
know, because I know you had some family encouraging you to pursue art as a career, but you didn't originally set out to do that. You went to tech and studied something a little bit different.
Yeah, I wanted to be an engineer. I'm very mechanically inclined, and I love my father, of course. I've watched him my whole life, so I really wanted to be an engineer. I went to engineering school and did very well with it. I will say that I flunked algebra 3 times in college, but I made really good grades in geometry and trigonometry because it had
Mhm.
shapes to it. But there was a little thing called calculus that stopped the engineering degree. I just couldn't grasp it. So
Mhm.
that's when I ended up going back to, after a year of engineering, I went back to Henderson and ended up going into computer graphics, graphic design.
Mhm.
I worked in advertising for several years after college
Mhm.
till my paintings started selling.
Yeah.
So then 97, I believe, is when I decided to be a full-time artist.
Mhm. What's it like taking that dive? Because that has to be a little bit unnerving.
Oh, it was terrifying, really. I was so ready to do it, but it's really scary because you don't know where your next paycheck's coming from.
Right.
And I sold a lot of paintings, that year. I decided to do it. It's feast or famine, basically.
Mhm.
And I've been doing it ever since as a full-time artist. But I will say about half the year I make very good money and half the year I make no money at all. You really
Yeah.
have to budget and you learn to do that.
Mm.
But it wasn't easy to figure all that out. They don't tell you that in art school.
I knew a guy who uh, his writing was taking off, and he decided to, quit his day job, pursue writing full time, and he had the most difficult time uh, not doing anything book writing. Like he, might go sit on the porch and read a book or something, and the thought would occur to him, you know, I could be making money writing right now.
Yeah.
So do you struggle with that?
Well, I feel like I live in two worlds part of the time. You have to make money to pay your bills. So,
Mhm.
you take on commission jobs and stuff like that. And, the galleries, of course, you think of your galleries and everything. Kind of work I do now, especially the social justice part, I feel like I have to do two different bodies of work. So I feel like I've doubled my workload actually.
Mhm.
It's hard for me still to this day still to find time to kind of balance all that with personal time as well.
Yeah.
My personal time at this point, we started having a girls' poker night a few weeks ago, and that's been a lot of fun. We don't bet money,
Mhm.
but we just have fun and we cook and all that. Um, but my personal time is just basically me collapsing on the couch after I paint for 15 hours. So yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
So that'd be a problem.
I mean, especially since it is kind of feast or famine too.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. And then when you have pieces on, in a museum or touring or something, you've got 30 to 50 pieces of art somewhere else. And then you get a phone call going, what do you have in inventory? And you're like, oh my God, hang on. So it's a lot of work. It really is. And
Mhm.
I've been doing most of this by myself. I haven't had a lot of, I mean, I've got gallery representation, but not the kind of representation that really handles a lot of the kind of the social justice stuff that I do as well. So it's been a full-time gig pretty much.
Is that a whole different kind of sphere? Uh, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it's I'm thinking like some literary agents focus on fiction, others on nonfiction. It's rare to have someone that maybe does both or crosses genres and the like. Are there some galleries very open to social justice themed art and others just not?
Yeah, I think so. Real quick, is my thing really dark or can you see it okay?
It shifts a little. Sometimes it's lighter, sometimes it's dark. I don't know.
Sorry about that. I'll try to kind of come in a little closer to it.
Okay.
Yeah, I've noticed that the galleries that uh, really push that and really embrace it, I guess, not really push it, but embrace it, they're more up here on the East Coast
Hmm.
than down in the South. I know there's some down in the South, but not like up here. It's really embraced up here compared to, other areas.
Hmm.
So I have noticed a difference in that. And maybe that has something to do with the clientele and the demand, things like that as well. More progressive areas, of course. I mean, I can understand that. So,
Hmm. I was just, as someone who doesn't know the art world,
yeah.
trying to
Well,
answer.
I'm an artist and I think I know the art world, I wake up every day and I learn something new about it. So you never really know the art world, and it constantly evolves and shifts as well. So.
But do you want to, I believe I can share a screen, and if you want to walk through, because you sent me Watchfires, your most recent exhibition, and this is at the Rosa Parks Museum, right?
Yes, and I'm gonna grab a catalog real quick over here as well.
Okay. I will, here we go. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so thus all art is propaganda and ever must be, despite the wailing of the purists. I do not care a damn for any art that is not used for propaganda, but I do care when propaganda is confined to one side while the other is stripped and silent. Did you choose that quotation?
Now, Madeline Burkhart with the Rosa Parks Museum chose that. She put this together. I edited it down a little bit before I sent it to you, but she chose that. And we did a big Zoom talk with the Huntsville, Alabama Lutheran Church a few weeks ago. And that's what this was for. And it really was a very powerful talk. I was very impressed with how well that went and how receptive the church was to a lot of these pieces.
Do you think some of the, I guess, reluctance to embrace art that is civil rights or social justice themed is kind of based on this idea that it's less pure than other art?
Maybe so. I don't know. I've noticed a lot of people are very uncomfortable with it. I still have people talk to me about that, respectfully, of course, these days. I've had some that were not respectful a while back with some of my work, and they were mainly people close to me. I rarely get negative comments from the work itself, but it makes people uncomfortable. And a lot of people are ready to kind of like with COVID, they're ready to move past it. Well, I get that. I mean, gosh, I'm exhausted half the time after reading about these horrible things and trying to convey how I feel through artwork. But you can't just pretend like it's not there. And it's worse now than it has been in a very long time. So I think it just makes people uncomfortable, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Let's scroll through here. Reflection. Right. So we got the Confederate flag in the closet here. And is that your cat?
That is my cat. That is actually taken from an original photograph. I bought this old Civil War wardrobe from an antique dealer, and I liked it, and it was from Tennessee, and I brought it home, and I had it in the back of my studio at the time, which was in part of the house before I moved out to St. Joseph's. And I had a Confederate flag, an American flag, and a pride flag I'd hung in it because I use them in my art projects. And so there was a mirror on it. And so I was on my computer with my back to it, and I heard the door creak one day, and I turned around and my cat had jarred the door open. And that's a different photograph as well. But it was a picture. I saw myself actually in that kind of a photograph of me in my head looking in that mirror. And all I could see was that Confederate flag in my face. And when I saw that, I took a picture with my phone. I still have the original photograph. It just reminded me of how, as a child of the South, you carry a lot of these myths and half truths with you the rest of your life. And you constantly fight it. You constantly have to address it and deal with it. And you don't ever forget the things you were told, which were not true. So yeah, I thought I named it Reflection because it was a very reflective moment with my upbringing, my Southern upbringing.
Right. And that's some of the difficulty is it's like there are so many songs that you may have heard on the radio, country music that still evokes that emotion. But if the South would have won, we'd have had it made. It's just not the sentiment to carry forward.
Right.
Or these things can still be so evocative, because they were just part of the culture growing up. But there's sort of a tension of knowing better, but still feeling that sort of original connection to that culture.
Right. And that's all a lot of us heard as kids, I mean,
Mhm.
I was always told and I was taught that, the northern aggressors came down to take our wealth and our rich farmlands and our women and cattle, and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And slavery was rarely mentioned when those conversations, were had. And, it's really nice to be, it's not nice. It's very easily, I guess I should say, to be rich when you've got free labor. No
Yeah.
one talked about that when I was young.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I don't know if a lot of people just don't think about it. They just don't want to think about it. They like the old myths and legends of the good old South. But the older I get, the more I realize how much I was lied to.
Yeah. I may have skipped this one. So watch fires. What is this?
Yeah, that's the piece right now that's at the Rosa Parks Museum as well. And when I picked the name out, I thought the whole story about the watchfires, of course, I was really impressed with it. I did not realize at the time when I was reading it, my initial research on it, I didn't realize that the watchfires actually originated here in the Hudson River Valley area where I am now. Beacon is one of my favorite villages to visit. It's about 30 minutes from here. And it's Beacon because of the fires,
Mhm.
They lit the fires basically so the sentinels could, find their way back and all that. And so I don't know, I read a whole lot on it. And I thought about doing a giant piece for the Rosa Parks Museum. We actually talked about a very, very large sculptural piece in the middle of the floor, but I decided to go with something small.
Mhm.
And I lit it up with some LEDs, and it really turned out nice to be such a simple. Simplicity has really been the key with a lot of my pieces. And so I was really pleased on how this turned out.
I was thinking beacons, that's also it's evocative and more positive in the sense there in New York, but it was also the fiery cross on the hill here in the South too, was its own sort of beacon.
Right. That's true. That's very true.
Mhm. Okay. So America.
Pretty self-explanatory. You
As
have to
in,
admit the past several years have felt that way.
are these locust thorns?
They are. They're honey locust thorns that came
Mhm.
from St. Joseph's, out where my studio was.
Yeah.
And those things they're huge. They're
Oh
really
yeah.
big.
No, my father-in-law, he fell out of a locust tree once, and to his dying day, he still had bits of one lodged in him, you know.
Yeah, those things will kill you if you fall on them wrong.
Yeah. They're huge. So uncomfortable,
Painful.
painful.
Yeah.
Also, flag desecration.
Well, yeah, pretty much. We could go into a whole realm of that.
Hmm.
I use flags a lot in my work. I was brought up to respect the flag a great deal, but when they're selling American flag thongs in, clothing stores, I'm not going to get too worked up over it, to be honest with
Well,
you. Right.
and I'll tell you what always bothered me. I lived in Jonesboro, and every Memorial Day, I lived across from the public library, and they'd line surround the library with those little plastic flags. And, the next morning, half of them are laying down, touching the ground, and it's kind of, I too was taught to respect the flag, military parents, and so kind of aware of the flag code and the fact that it shouldn't be touching the ground. And also the fact that when you just mass reproduce something like that, it has no value anymore.
That's exactly right. It's too commercialized, you know, to
Mhm.
begin with. And
Yeah.
I think about that often. I've used a silk flag. It was a very old flag and it was falling apart. And I used that in one of my pieces to talk about a homeless man. And I caught a little flack on that. And I'm like, you know, really? I mean, my gosh,
Mm.
it's so commercialized these days. I
Yeah.
think that if you're using it to try to make a difference towards something good, to get people's attention, to talk to them about things and the changes that need to happen so we can be a better society, especially toward each other, which is
Mhm.
what the flag represents to begin with, is us being united. I have no problem using it in artwork. If
Yeah.
you know, I really feel that I feel it's justified.
How did you harvest your locust thorns?
Well, they had cut one of the locust trees down and they were
Oh,
going to
okay.
burn it in a burn pile. So I went out there one day, and let me tell you a little tip when you go collect those off the ground. Wear
Mhm.
boots,
Yeah.
not tennis shoes. And so I went out there with some really strong and sharp clippers and was able to get a whole bag full of them.
Scroll to the next here. So fraud.
Yes, that is actually a very old and it's handmade ballot box
Oh, yeah, I see now. Yeah.
from Arkansas. And
Mhm.
you can't see it underneath. You can see a little bit of the lip on the first part, on the front part, but on the side, if you looked real close, it's curved underneath.
Mhm.
And they would strap that ballot box on the back of a mule
I
and
see
walk
it
it.
right there, kind of the.
Yeah. Yeah. They'd walk it through the different communities, the rural communities to where people could vote, but they'd walk that mule with that ballot box strapped on the back
Mhm.
of it. Now, that piece was, when it was opened up, it actually had a taxidermied fox in it with the Murder of Crows / Break Glass exhibition.
Mm.
And hang on a second, turn that off. Anyway, um, it fell apart. The fox fell apart. The fox in the ballot box fell apart after the exhibition was over and the tour was over. So I got these wooden crows and I carved on them a little bit because I wanted to go ahead and still use that. I think voting rights, especially, very important right now. And so when you walk past it, I've got a little infrared kind of a camera eye. When you walk past it, I've got a recording that screams fraud and it
Mhm.
echoes in the empty ballot box. And that's at the Rosa Parks Museum right now as well.
Mhm.
And of course, the crows represent Jim Crow.
Right. Is Shady Grove number 15? Is that the voting district?
I guess so. That was on there when I got it.
Okay.
Shady Grove, Arkansas.
Now you've told me the story behind this. Tell everyone else what the Sugar Shack was, because I see the original photograph here.
Yeah, I was reading a book on the way into Manhattan one day, and it was incredible. It was basically talking about the history of, you know, Alabama and the Black Belt in Alabama. Talked about voting rights and all that. And there was a photograph in that book, which you can see the photograph there. Um, Before the Voting Rights Act passed, there was hardly, there wasn't any actually. It was zero black voters, you know, in that part of the country at all. But once the Voting Rights Act passed, uh, all the black community, they all dressed in their Sunday best and lined up and went to an old mercantile store called the Sugar Shack to vote. And it outnumbered the white vote 2-1 after that.
Mhm.
And so I thought that was so powerful. That photograph alone was very moving. I couldn't quit thinking about it. Um, they were so proud to vote, and I just found it very moving. So I wanted to replicate that building. I actually called the Wilcox Historical Society down there in Wilcox, Alabama, and I asked them. I said, "Is the Sugar Shack still standing?" Which I knew it probably wasn't, and they said no. And I said, "Is there a marker?" Because that was a very profound moment, and it's a very historical, you know, moment. And they said there is no marker down there. And I hate that because I think that's really important to mark things like that. So I replicated it and then told the story about it. And it's been a pretty successful piece down there. People like it.
Here's John Lewis. Good trouble.
Yeah, I really like him a lot.
Hmm.
I painted him on a door. I haven't done a screen door like that in a long time, and I did not put the screen on it. Basically, just used the frame of the door for this. But once again, I wanted to talk about voting rights and how important it is. And at the base of his shoe, I actually used dirt from the Edmund Pettus Bridge, at the base of the Edmund Pettus Bridge, to put on there. So I painted that on there as well, like it's on the bottom of his shoes. And that is pretty much one of the iconic pieces down there in the museum. It's one of the first things you see when you walk in.
I think we have a metaphor here.
I love this piece.
Mhm.
That is an old New York gaming piece. Used to be or gaming, like a gambling machine. And
Right.
so I ran across it up here. There's some guys up here that have some really cool stuff. And I ran across it and took everything out of it. And basically I filled it up with, I can't remember exactly how many, but it's half the pages of the Bible, the cherries inside it, plastic cherries, to represent cherry picking of scripture. And so, I really wanted to kind of it's just like they just pick and choose at random when they want to try to, push something towards you that is not accurate. But anyway, that piece has been very powerful, and I really enjoyed working on that. I hand painted those letters on there on that glass with gold leaf, and it really turned out. I'm really pleased with how that turned out.
If I put a quarter in that, could I get a cherry?
No, it's really not. I could make it operational, but it's not operational.
Well, I'm just saying, artists need to earn money, right? I mean,
Well, that's true. I need to rethink some of these projects.
tent revival.
Yeah, I'm going to read a little bit about this one. Let me pull this one up real quick.
Okay.
All right. Hang on here. All right, so I want to make sure I get his name right. Okay, this is actually a revival tent made out of a Klan robe.
Okay.
It was a Klan robe worn by the Grand Wizard and Cyclops Roy Frankenhauser, and you can look him up. He was a wild guy. He was out of Pennsylvania. He was was one of the leaders of the Klan. He ended up becoming a government informant, and then he became a preacher. So, I kind of wanted to talk about the white supremacy that's still in the churches today. They've been there a long time. They haven't gone anywhere, and it's just evolved into a more modern religious kind of thing. But yeah, but I got the idea for this. I was talking to an antique dealer out of Atlanta, and he had an original photograph of a revival tent, and it was a really small photograph. So when I zoomed in on it, I could see it was like tent revival here or whatever, but you could see Sunday service. It was a Klan service, but I mean a Klan meeting. And there was a little sign next to it that said Sunday services. So the church and the Klan were sharing the same tent. And so that's what inspired me to do this piece. And we put the photograph in there in the exhibition as well.
Yeah. Have you read Ken Barnes' book on the Klan in Arkansas yet?
I have not. I've heard a lot about it, and I have not yet. I need to do that.
I mean, one of the things he emphasizes is just how much the Klan and the church were kind of imbricated.
They still are. They're not running around in hoods and robes anymore. But the white supremacy connection with churches, a lot of churches, not all churches, but a lot of churches, is still very strong.
So benevolent hue.
Yeah, I'm gonna read a little bit about that one too. Hang on.
Okay, because I see the Confederate flag. I see a Holy Bible in this purse hanging from a praying cross.
I was actually working on this piece after I moved up here. I was working on this piece, and I was carrying some heavy stuff in and out of the studio because I've got a balcony that I work on. And this is the piece that I broke my arm on. I broke my arm when I got here. I was drilling some stuff really heavy, and I'd strained my arm real bad. I came in and stumbled into something else. So I'll never forget this piece. So this is kind of, let me see, I was reading an article. I want to make sure I get her name correct as well. Laura Ellis, she is a writer with Baptist News Global, and she was talking in her article on how nice white women participate in white supremacy too.
Mm-hmm.
And the main way that they participate is they're silent about it, but yet they know about it and they embrace it. Ellis states that one of the main foundations of racism is that the quote, virtue of white women is threatened by the existence of Black men. They are a damsel in distress whose sexual virtue and therefore value needed to be protected and kept pure at all cost. Men then commit unspeakable atrocities in the so-called name of honor and virtue as the women stand silent beside them. And so I really wanted to do this piece. I grew up in the church, and there was a lot of really good people in the church as well, but that I went to. But I never thought about the silence of the women of the church and how that encouraged a lot of atrocities. I mean, once you stop and think about it, you realize it. I mean, you know that. But I really thought long and hard on this. I put a white Bible inside that purse to represent white supremacy. That Confederate flag actually came from Appomattox. It had blown over on the ground, and one of the caretakers there had given it to me. And so I put that in there to represent the white supremacy movement too.
And I was thinking Jessie Daniel Ames, who founded the Association of Southern Women for the Prevention of Lynching, she was fighting back against this narrative that women must be protected, because she realized that, white men were using kind of that fear of Black men, not just to justify violence, but also to oppress women, to essentially say, you need to stay in your box because there are all these dangers out here, and we have to protect you. But there are a lot of women not just silent, but active, instigators. There's a recent book out published by Oxford University Press called Mothers of Mass Resistance, about all the women's groups that fought for segregation, and there was the Mothers League of Central High. So I think sometimes the role of women has gotten written out of, the history of the anti-civil rights movement because we focus so much on the men.
Oh, I agree completely on that. Yeah, I agree.
Recipe box.
Yeah, this actually came from Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
An antique picker, a friend of mine, contacted me and he goes, I've got something for you. And I said, all right. And he says, I couldn't believe it when I saw it. He says, I grab these little recipe boxes up. Sometimes he goes, every now and then you'll see somebody stash something in the back of it at these estate sales. He said, so I was eating dinner and I brought it home and I was eating dinner and I started kind of looking through it. And he said there was a folded up piece of paper in the back. And he said, it made me sick when I pulled it out because apparently this recipe box, the estate sale, was a minister's, belonged to a minister and his wife. Yeah. And so this must be her recipe box, but there's tracts in there, pamphlets saying, go to church, go to Sunday school, things like that. And then there's the most racist poem that was folded up behind all that. That's kind of very reflective of what we just talked about.
Right.
So that's at the Rosa Parks. All these are down there right now, but I really tried to tie in a whole bunch of the white supremacy that's just basically right next door to you a lot of times, and you don't even realize it. It surrounds us in our society through our churches and everything like that. And then also how important it is to try to vote some of this down, some of this out, how important voting rights are. So that's pretty much what the Rosa Parks, Watchfire's body of work is about.
Veneration. Again, I think we have a metaphor here.
Well, veneration, that is actually about $200 worth of silver coins. Past a certain date, of course, had a lot of silver.
And, I see. Yeah, that one's dated 1963.
Yeah.
Others in
Yeah.
there, yeah.
I wanted 30 pieces of silver for that. I've talked
Mhm.
about 30 pieces of silver in several of my pieces. Basically, Jim Crow has pushed out Christ,
Mhm.
and I did this piece when Jerry Falwell Jr. was acting so crazy at the time. It really, I mean, gosh. So that's that, and of course, Jim Crow and 30 pieces of silver and all that kind of goes
Mhm.
together. But that's a very heavy piece and it does light up. It had a piece of neon and you can't see it, but it's under that lip.
Mhm.
So I'm assuming it used to belong to a church or something at some point before it ended up in the antique store.
Mhm. Are you going to do something pool boy themed?
I probably should.
Yeah.
That's old news now, though.
I know. Who even knows who Jerry Falwell Jr. and his wife and pool
Exactly.
boy are anymore? It's the news cycle is taking us on and on. How big is this piece?
Oh, hang on, let me look here. Can't remember off the top of my head.
I mean, can sort of tell by the
It's-
quarters.
Yeah, it's 28 inches tall by
Okay.
12 inches wide by 7
Mhm.
inches deep.
Okay.
And
So and
see, that's an old piece I've done, and not an old, but an older piece.
Mhm.
That is not at the Rosa Parks. Madeline put that in when we did the church talk because it was talking about a story about a church.
Right.
And yeah, this piece, I visited a church several years ago in a small community, South Arkansas, and I was sitting in the congregation, and everybody's starting to get very comfortable and warm and snuggly. You kind of drift a little bit,
Mhm.
and the preacher, it was an elderly gentleman, all of a sudden just screamed the N word and then queers, and I was like, whoa, what did he just say? I mean, the sad thing is, I was the only one that sat straight up in the pew.
Mhm.
Everyone else just, I guess, was used to it. And that scared me even more.
Yeah.
So after, of course, I started looking for an exit door at that point. After the service was over, I was talking to a woman in the parking lot, older woman, had her Bible tucked under her arm, and I knew her. And I said, what just happened in there? What was that all about? And she started talking to me and trying to leaf through the Bible, could never put her finger on it, but she was leafing through the pages and saying that when Cain killed Abel, that's when God turned him black, and that's why blacks are beneath us. Because I was like, what? Oh my God, I couldn't believe it.
Mhm.
And the fact that no one questioned that really bothered me. It really bothered me. I never went back, of course,
Mhm.
but that church is still there today. You know, it wasn't that long ago. So
Yeah.
I did this piece, and inside that Dixie Mix old metal tin, um, there is a Bible sealed up inside of that.
Mm.
And then I talk about that event.
It, dromedary Dixie mix.
Yeah, I don't know what was that? Is that
I don't know. I mean, a dromedary is a camel.
I'd had to be tobacco, I would guess then maybe tobacco or
Okay.
something. Yeah. I have a lot of cross burning press photographs at the Rosa Parks Museum right now that I've been
Mhm.
collecting over the years. When newspapers shut down across the country, um, a lot of those press photos were bought in bulk and then resold online through historical photograph places and all that. And so I've been able to, pick them up over the years, and they're all framed and on exhibit down there right now. And then the piece next to it is If the Shoe Fits. I did that a few years ago when I was at St. Joe's during the pandemic. And the little head it looked just like a little
Right.
clown head to me when I
Yeah,
walked,
especially in the shadow. Yeah.
Yeah, I've used shadows before in my work, to where you can project something on the wall, and that really worked out well for that piece.
Mhm.
So they hung that in the middle of all those cross burning photographs. And people think, oh, well, those photographs back that one's from '64 in Florida. Well, I've got some photographs there that were in the late '80s, early '90s.
Yeah.
There was a cross burning that was only in Alabama. It was like 2 to 3 years ago, I believe,
Mhm.
made the national news. So it was I don't know, it's really been interesting to look at all of these. And a lot of them come from all across the country. It's not just in the South.
Mhm.
Pennsylvania was a big hotbed and probably still is in certain areas for white supremacy.
So, I mean, the upper Midwest, it's absolutely a hotbed of, you know, I don't think folks realize how active the Klan was on the West Coast too. And, in places like Colorado, the Klan was sort of opportunistic and that it would affiliate with whatever party was in power.
Right.
So we associate the Klan with segregation era Democrats, down here, but in New York and Colorado and other places, they were, had heavily infiltrated the Republican Party. So yeah, it was absolutely a national movement.
Well, and you're exactly right about the opportunistic, kind of can't talk. Say the word, can't say it.
I opportunistic.
I just took a drink of fuzzy beer. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right about that because, when their numbers started falling apart, that's when they hooked up with the neo-Nazis and thinking that it would help boost their numbers and all that. Well, the leadership was so fragmented, which is extremely dangerous in organizations like that. And the neo-Nazis made it much worse. A lot of Ku Klux Klan to this day do not like the neo-Nazis in their wings, but they can't get rid of them now.
Right.
And they've become even more dangerous, more fragmented, and very extreme.
Mhm.
So, in fact, you don't think about it, but around where I am right now, there was some white supremacy stickers on the light pole out here not too long ago. So they're everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, that's the end of that.
Yeah,
So,
that's yeah.
let me see if I can stop sharing. Here we go. Well, I'm going to, if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask, open it up. What are you working on right now?
I've got a few pieces I've been roughing out right now. I need to make a trip back to Arkansas. I've got some materials down there that I need to pick up. I've struggled to find a few things up here that I'm looking for. So I haven't been home in almost a year because of COVID. So I'm going to try to head back in the next month or so to do that. But I will be doing some new pieces for the show in Cincinnati in November. And that's what I'm working on now.
Mhm. And future plans? Are you staying up there for the foreseeable future, or?
It is so dark. I'm going to stay up here a little bit longer up here. I like it so far.
Mhm.
And I've got some big meetings coming up. A lot doesn't happen in the wintertime here because it's so cold and there's so much snow.
Mhm.
But now that things are starting to warm up just a little bit and winter's hopefully almost over soon, there's a lot going on and a lot happening. I was selected to be a juror for an art exhibition through the Loft, which is an LGBT community center out of White Plains, and the Upstream Gallery, which is what is it, Hudson on Hastings? Yes, and they partnered up for an exhibition, and I'm a juror for that. And I've just got a whole lot of things going on up here right now, so I'm gonna stay a little longer and just see where it goes.
Mhm. I'm not seeing any questions yet. You people are not. Sometimes on a Monday night, especially after spring break, and I see one or two of the people here are parents who are probably still recovering from spring break, but we're glad they're here. I guess it's not really spring break if you've got snow on the ground up there.
Yeah, the snow really didn't stick today, but it blew through. Did you see what happened in Pennsylvania today?
No.
Boy, a big old snow squall blew through, and there was a huge interstate pileup.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, these squalls are something else. I've never seen anything like them before. It's just crazy. It looks fine outside, and then next time you turn around, you can't see your hand in front of your face, and and it's blowing like crazy, and then it's gone. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen.
Huh. That's I mean, we just had tornadoes roll through, the South last week. So I guess it's a matter of whatever you're used to.
Well, I don't miss those tornadoes. I got to be honest with you. I don't miss them at all. I hate those things.
Well, my friend Stephanie Harp says, hold on just a moment. I don't have a question, but I'm so glad to see your work and hear your discussion about it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And I should give a shout out to Stephanie Harp. She's written on the John Carter lynching.
Oh.
She wrote a chapter in an edited anthology and has been doing some lecturing and talk on that. So.
Oh, wow. I have a great interest in that. That's amazing.
You should get the book Bullets and Fire and read her chapter. My friend Mark Chris asks, is that a work in progress leaning against the wall behind you?
The latter part?
Mm-hmm.
No, that is actually an old ladder there was a guy that owned some shoe stores in South Arkansas, and he became ill years later and started selling off the stuff he had in his warehouses, and he was an older gentleman. And I fell in love with that ladder, and he sold it to me for a really good deal, and we became friends. And so I have carried that ladder everywhere I've gone, and you should see it has to ride up on my dash all the way to the back of my vehicle. I may use it in a project one day. I'm not beyond doing that, but at this point, I just really enjoy having it around.
What's the setup on your table there? It looks like you've robbed a church window.
That was part of the murder of crows. That window is. And that is an 1896 stained glass window that came out of a church in Arkadelphia before it was torn down. And so when Dylan Roof went in and shot up that church and killed all those people years ago, that really stressed me out. I decided to do this project to talk about that. And then when he did that, then several churches in the South started burning. Black churches started burning down. People were setting them on fire. So I had part of an old church pew left in my materials. So the wood part where you see that looks like a cross in it, that is an old church pew behind there. And I put wallpaper on it, torched it. And that is a fire extinguisher, a very old fire extinguisher on the front of it right there.
Okay.
So that piece toured for a while, and I've just got it here just to get it off the ground. It's a lot safer.
Okay. Well, Stephanie Harp says she'd be happy to talk with you about her own research and about your work, because she's very interested in the connection between churches and racism. So I'll connect the two of you if you like.
Oh, I would love that. Yes, thank you.
And Ali Welke asks, can you talk a bit about the art included in the Billboard project in New York City 2020?
Yeah, thank you. That was part of a public art project that Art at a Time Like This and the two nonprofits and Save Art Space up here in New York went in together to do during COVID, because all the galleries and museums were shut down. It was a very powerful exhibition. There were only 20 people nationwide that were chosen for this, and I was honored to be one of them. And so they put them up, they put the billboards up through New York, and it really got a lot of attention. There was some amazing artists. Some of the artists that I was chosen to show with are some artists that I've looked up to over the years. And so I was really surprised and very happy to see that it made the New York Times, list for one of the top 20 art events of that year.
One of the top 20 art events, and you're one of the top 20 artists. So
isn't that weird?
You're 20th of a 20th. You're 1/400th. 1 out of 400.
I can't do math, guy. That's okay.
No wonder you didn't become the engineer.
No engineering.
Well, I'm guessing that's about it for the evening. We really enjoy you hanging out.
I've enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
And if people want to buy some of your art, how can they do that?
They can go to my website, and some of the pieces have been sold, but and I think I've got those pretty much caught up. I think they're listed on there.
So that's vlcox.com, vlcoxart.com.
It's just vlcox.com for the website.
vlcox.com. Okay.
VO Cox Art is my Instagram, and you get a little bit of everything on that. But feel free just to reach out and send me an email if you want to talk or anything. Also, I enjoy the communication.
I will put the website here so folks can go check it out. And I put the link to the Encyclopedia of Arkansas entry earlier in the chat. Follow you on Instagram, follow you on Twitter, Facebook.
Now, heads up, Twitter's my political therapy.
Okay.
I talk about cats a lot on Facebook. Twitter's totally different.
Uh-huh. And Instagram's all art?
Well, sometimes it's art, sometimes it's stuff that I do. I enjoy it because it's more of a visual based thing. So sometimes I put pictures of my adventures and stuff like that. Because I feel like this is all a big adventure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've had a blast.
Me too.
Always good talking to you.
Yes.
One last person, Katie says, thank you for sharing your art with the world and sharing your time with us this evening.
Oh, I've enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me.
I think that's the perfect sentiment to end on here. So we'll chat with you later, and we'll definitely revisit you and see what you're doing here in the future. And anyhow, just had a lovely time.
All right. I enjoyed it too, y'all. Thank y'all so much.